Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this session in the International Week of Happiness at Work 2025. And why am I doing this? Because I find it important, and we need to discuss this matter because as we know, we spend a large part of our lives at work, and this has a significant impact on the rest of our lives. Therefore, paying more attention to happiness at work can make a difference. And by declaring the last week, or as in this part, the first week of October, as the week of work happiness, we wanted to put this theme on the map for as many organizations as possible, both domestically and internationally. This way, we ensure that the movement towards greater work happiness grows for both organization and individuals. And these are the words from the founders of, or the ladies in Netherlands who started this week in 2018. And without further ado, I'm going to talk about my guest today. Happiness is a serious business. A book that was published or came to the stores a month ago, and it is written by a brilliant guy called Nic Marks. And Nic is, as it happens, I think a mad mathematician gone rogue. And why do I say that, Mr. Nic Marks? You are a mathematician, and why are you talking about happiness? What happened? Did you like bump your head into a wall, or oh, by the way, I love your hair. I did the same to my hair. I didn't like comb it this morning. So welcome and thank you for speaking to me. Well, okay, maybe not after this introduction, but
No, I definitely am channeling the mad scientist look, yeah, or the druid look, depending which way you look on it, really. But
oh yeah, I forgot that as well.
yes,
It's mad. I woke up this morning and I thought, oh my God, he is a mad scientist because like why go rogue? Like why is this if you are into numbers and then you go to the happiness, but then again, it feels so like utterly clever because when you do the math, then happiness at work must be something that everybody should focus on, isn't it?
I mean that's where I get to really is I think it's a no-brainer, but the creating the business case, creating how you measure happiness at work and how you can track it, how you can understand team happiness at work, I think is really, really important to pushing the whole agenda because numbers are the language of business. So if we don't have numbers about happiness, it's just very easy to sort of park it in a sort of like a nice side street where we can have a little, like the main highway is going along and there's a little side street with a nice market and a nicer thing. Oh, that's happiness at work over there. But actually it should be the main thoroughfare because this is, the experience of work is what motivates people. In the end, it boils down to something very simple, that when people feel good, they do good work. It's as simple as that. But it's getting the evidence together. It's showing people how to take that seriously. That's really what I've tried to write in this book.
And because the people who are at work, the human research people, they want numbers, they want statistics, they want whys and hows, and that is what they're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think everybody is. I think team leaders are under a lot of pressure. They've got results to deliver, and if something can't be measured, then it doesn't really get managed. I mean, it's that old cliche, what gets measured gets managed. So, so I mean, that's really what I'm trying to fulfill, and yeah, I'm not really a mathematician. I was the really annoying guy at school that was top of maths without trying. That I could just do it. And I ended up at Cambridge reading maths before I'd ever made a decision in life because I was in the top stream and my school liked people going to Oxford and Cambridge. So boom, you're there. And then I realized I wasn't a mathematician at all. I am ultimately an applied statistician. I like numbers are my weapon of choice. How do I? And so, and that evolved over sort of 15, 20 years of working, of just realizing what I liked doing was solving problems. What I liked was people. I liked understanding people's experience of life. I mean, I trained as a therapist, which is kind of left field. My mother was a family therapist, and I trained as a therapist. I ended up having this two separate streams of my life where I was doing, statistical work, and I was doing a bit of therapy, a bit of group work. I was very into early work on masculinity because I didn't really know how to be a man in the world. And so I was very interested in all this sort of what we call soft stuff. And I had these hard analytical skills. And in the end, I don't think mad. I think I become the really sensible, sane person that brings the two things together with slightly mad hair.
Yeah. Now I'm only like, you look the part as a therapist. God, like you amaze me, Nic. And it's difficult, but when you are in school, or like if you have, okay, you must be your brain, because mathematician, that is just bonkers, isn't it? It's, the equations and looking at the numbers. It's just like the conductors, like they have these special skills to read all the stuff in front of them and conduct all the music. And you are just, I look at numbers and I'm just like, yeah.
It's patterns. In some ways, a lot of mathematicians are musical. I'm not actually, but I I like music, but at school, they used to say, "Oh, can you go and show your peer how you did this?" And I go, "Yeah, look, you just do this, see," and they wouldn't see, and I'm like, "But look, see this," and then and I can't tell you where that comes from. That's a natural thing. It's not effortful. It's just a natural ability, and that's a piece of luck, isn't it? That's a piece of genetic luck.
But okay, going back to when you were at the university and you were figuring out, because we all do that, like what is the role of a man, and you have, because we are at the same age, only 29, and we are like, our role models, they were guys in suits and with a tie, and like the women, they were at the home, and they like when you got home from school, your mother was there, and my mother was there, maybe, I don't know, like I think, but you mentioned that your mother was a therapist. So a lot changed in the course of, like, when we were growing up, and then I probably see you as a punk rocker as well, because you must have taken that in as well.
I wasn't really a punk at school. I was into very unfashionable music, like sort of prog rock, and then into slightly soft metal. and I used to like all the fantasy stuff. I mean, I used to really like a band called Rush, which are not very fashionable, and because they used to write lyrics. I'm very into lyrics, and then my music mellowed over the years. I mean, I'm more into like someone like Leonard Cohen and a poet, but I do like driving music. I like music with with meaning, I think. And it's not to say I can't listen with my kids to drum and bass sometimes, but I can only take 2 rap songs in a row and I want something else. I mean, life was very, growing up in the 70s, I'm born 64. Growing up in the 70s was interesting. The music was changing every year, and the political scene was very dramatic. We ended up in the UK with strikes and Margaret Thatcher, and a lot of change. And so I grew up in a very turbulent time. We obviously had beginning of the environmental movement, which I've been a part of all my life. Silent Spring by Rachel Carson was late 60s. Those sort of ideas were starting to move in. Feminism was, equality for women was starting to come, and that was something I very responded to. I have 3 older sisters, a mother. I'm brought up in a very feminine family. My father was benign neglect as a father. He wasn't really around. So I'm quite a feminine male in that way, and so I was very, very open to all of these ideas, and I've been quite small p political, not party political, all my life. Doing policy. I think I mean, I just sort of try and do stuff with my skills kind of in service of the greater good. That sounds very grandiose, but that's kind of what I try and do. Yeah, for sure.
But when you started, okay, you go through uni and you finish your degree and you start wondering about and like, am I this or who am I? Like, what am I and what not? And then you come upon because I have only been doing this. I have only been talking about happiness at work for 5 years.
Yeah.
And when you say the word happiness, and as it here in Iceland, happiness, if you Google it or if you translate it, we have like, I don't know, 50 words that means happiness because we can have, depending on the weather, we can have happiness around that. Like it's bonkers because we just, but everybody knows what happiness is. But when you say the word, leaders, they just like,
Well,
like what is your response when you started this journey? Like what did people tell? Like did they look at you and say, huh?
It's really, really interesting this, right? I started work under the word well-being in 2001. That's my start. I started in a think tank in London. They challenged me. I was already doing work on quality of life, how you measure it. I was already trained as a therapist. I was doing some group change work. So the director of this think tank, the New Economics Foundation, kind of saw in me a sort of way of bringing these bits together. And he said, look, we've got some work starting on well-being. Nobody knows what it means. It was a policy word. I'm in a policy think tank. And I said, well, I'd like to measure it, like to create measures of it. And so we started to do some work. 2001 literally started me volunteering 1 day a week. By 2004, we were advising the UK government on how to measure well-being. We weren't the only people, but we were right there in the throw of it. And we created something. I think this is 2004, called a well-being manifesto. It was kind of like, what would policy look like if well-being was its aim? And we used to have. Actually, maybe I've got one here. Yeah, here. Still got one here. So we handed out these little leaflets, right? And they're basically all policies that governments can do. And so we're at the political parties, which are these big gatherings of the political parties, and we're lettering people. We're giving them, and most people have got a bit of A4, do this, and I'm giving out this, right? And I would say, here's a manifesto for well-being. I don't know, 1 in 10 people would take it. So I sometimes would say, here's a manifesto for happiness. More people took it. More people took it when I said the word happiness than the word well-being. And that is the first time I started to realize that the word happiness was very attractive, because I thought well-being was much more serious. People wouldn't take it seriously. And so then when we created what became known as the Happy Planet Index, which is really the big breakthrough work that we did internationally, which is 2006, my first word expression for that index that I created was Sustainable Wellbeing Index. I mean, there's absolutely no way it would have flown globally, called the Sustainable Wellbeing Index. The same data called the Happy Planet Index, boom, went. So you've got this strange thing with happiness where it's both really attractive and then people don't take it seriously. And that's kind of why my book is called Happiness. That's aspirational. Inspiration is a serious business. Is now, and it's why I've got the 2 colors on it. I was telling you afterwards. I've got an aspirational color up here. I've got a grounded color here. Happiness is in the sky. Serious business is in the sort of water, the ground. And it's like, this is the thing we're always dealing with, that people want it and they won't take it seriously. And why not? Well, maybe because they've been let down so much. It's sort of, it's like kind of love. We want to be in love and fall in love or rise in love, but it's like, oh, it's dangerous because we're going to get hurt again. And I think sometimes happiness at work, and people can go, it's just over promising. And it's like, how do we do that? So I think it's a really complex interaction with the word, but I totally embrace it because it's much more challenging. If I go and say, I'm well-being is a serious business, it just sounds flat and dull. And happiness is much more interesting. So that's kind of why I embrace it. It's also a better measure, by the way. It's easier to measure happiness.
But isn't it as with well-being? If I think about well-being, it's it has everything to do with me and my motivation to take care of myself and go out and have a walk. Or if I choose not to, and if I bitch about it, then I guarantee you that my wife says, it's your own fault. Like, you can do loads about it. And that is the same with happiness. You have to embrace it, as you're saying, because you can self-decide. If you wake up in the morning and say, bugger.
Well, yes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
happiness is deeply relational.
Yeah.
So it's not just us. We are embedded in systems which can be functional or dysfunctional. Yes, there's things we can do. However, we're shaped. I mean, we're shaped by our environments. There's I use a poem in the middle of the book. I don't know if you got to that bit. It's when I moved to teams. It's written by a poet called David White. He's done a really nice TED talk, actually. This poem comes from the 90s, and he wrote it for Boeing. And it starts off, it goes, we shape ourselves to fit the world, and by the world are shaped again. So we shape ourselves to fit the world, and by the world are shaped again. The visible and the invisible working together in common cause to produce the miraculous. It's called working together. And what's really interesting about it is he's got the sort of slipperiness and the trickiness of teams. We have to shape ourselves to fit in a team. The team shapes us. But when we work together, kind of magic happens, or at least the business goals get met. So it's like, so teamwork is more, we don't work as individual sole traders. We work as teams, and things come together and build on each other. And happiness is part of that, because when people feel positive, they're more collaborative, they're more creative. So I think happiness is also very systemic. And it's why I always talk about connection as being really, really important to it, because relationships are the biggest drivers of happiness. So yes, there's some personal stuff. There absolutely is personal responsibility, and you're shaped by the systems.
And it's kind of like you are, like, because you get influenced by the society, and then you have to mix it and be your best version of what you have been taught, isn't it? It's just like a pot, like you are just stirring and stirring, and
yeah,
no wonder you get bonkers sometimes.
You do, and I think we can get worn down, we can get rised up. I mean, it's a huge advantage that I've had, maybe you have, to be brought up in a loving family.
Yeah.
That's a huge advantage. I've got my own small t traumas that have happened, and not everything is hunky-dory, and there are times that things went quite wrong for me as a child as well as an adult, and these things shape you too. However, I was brought up with the fundamentals of love, and some people don't get that privilege, and that shapes their whole life, and that's not their fault. That's not, and people who've got PTSD, who've got childhood trauma, who've had, I mean, think of women. Think of women, how much sexual harassment they have to deal with, which is nothing to do with them. That's not their fault. That is to do with bad male behavior, bad systems that don't stamp out bad male behavior. So, systems shape us. They really, really affect us. And work. And what's, to me, to go back to work, is what's so interesting about organizations is they're mini systems. But they're not they're complete systems, but statistically you can measure the whole system. So when I was working in public policy, it's very difficult to know, because there's so many interconnecting systems. It's very, very complex. And in a way, an organization is quite simple. You know where it begins and ends. I mean, even that is sometimes not true, because you've got people half in the organization, half aren't. But you roughly know what the boundary is, and the teams inside them, and you can measure these things. So you can see the system at work much more easily. So statistically, it's a joy.
Yeah, for people who love that kind of stuff. So, but our topic today is like getting unstuck. Why just okay at work is more dangerous than you think. And that brings us to your book, because as you mentioned, like, okay, just having this, there's something about it. I thought when you launched the book at the book launch, I thought Sweden, IKEA, and whatnot. But it was a Swedish, wasn't it? You were inspired by a Swedish artist.
Oh yes, by a Swedish artist. Yes, absolutely, but not by the Swedish flag, but by.
No, I know.
Yes, a Swedish artist. So there is a artist from turn of the last century, late 19th, early 20th century, called Hilma af Klint. She is the sort of first abstract artist, and her work was never really presented in her lifetime. So she's before Kandinsky, so I'm not so good at all the names, but if anyone's an artist, they will know who I mean. And she was painting on her own in Sweden, and it was a time in science where science and art were really meeting. So she was clearly incredibly well read, because she understood that, things like radio waves were happening and people were starting to understand what an atom was. And she was painting about these things, but from a very spiritual perspective. And she painted a series of pictures. She painted some beautiful, beautiful pictures, but a series of pictures, which is what my book is really about, which is sort of there's a horizon, there's a line, and above the line is the transcendent spiritual, and below the time is the material. So she was talking about the connection between the spiritual and material world. And I went to an exhibition of hers and my wife in Bilbao at New Year, and I just was blown away by her art. And I just was then designing the book cover, and my first design went, I'd like it like this with the above and below. And it's come out, I think, rather beautifully, because the happiness is in the sky and the serious business is in they're like a reflection with the colors. And so it is to go happiness, inspiration, serious business, grounding. So it is the transcendent and the material, in a playful way. And so I take that very seriously. Happiness is an inspiring word. It needs grounding.
I also see that the happiness is like in the horizon, or like it is there, like you have to grab it or something, like, so it's because it's a serious business. The lower part is more like grounded, and then the happiness is more like it's coming up, or like the sun or something. It's just like you get all sorts of associations with, but because you notice the word happiness, and the other stuff is just like later.
Yeah, I mean, I do really like the design, and and the book is a serious book about happiness, so I like the interplay with the words. It's quite when I came up with the title, which is actually a long time ago, and I've been doing talks on it for a long time, and I actually worried that someone might steal the title because it was sort of out there, but luckily nobody did. So I had a backup title in case that happened. So I really like it. But the Stuck in OK is really interesting because, happiness in some ways is a good, bad signal. That when things are going well, we feel happy. When they're not going well, we feel unhappy. And that signal, I'm interested in statistically, because in one question, I can get a good, bad signal, which is the first approximation about what happiness is. So asking people, where they are on a scale of 1 to 5, from, unhappy to very happy, very unhappy, unhappy, okay, happy, very happy, 5 points. That's the right length of scale for me. There's a chapter in the book about why that's the right length of scale. I won't go into that now, but you can see you on that continuum. People can answer that question. Great. And then if I look at the people who said they're happy, they're either happy or very happy. I look at people who are okay. I look at people who are unhappy. The unhappy are going to change something because they've actually got energy to change. Unhappiness is not a dead energetic space. It can be filled with rage. It can be filled with, it's got energy. Happy is full of energy because it's got energy to carry on, to take advantage of the opportunities. The dead space is okay. So, okay, there's a lack of energy. It's okay. There's not the energy to change. There's not the energy to carry on. And that's why it's almost like a U shape, that yes, unhappy is really bad, but something's going to change. Okay, you can just carry on. And so what happens is we kind of get stuck in okay. And this is not only work. We can get stuck in okay health. We're sort of okay. We haven't got a big health event, but we know we're suboptimal. We can get stuck in okay relationships. We probably all had that. It's not bad enough to change. It's not good enough to really make a heart sing, and we can get stuck in okay friendships, okay jobs. We can get stuck in okay jobs. They're not terrible. Speaking to a young woman yesterday, and her job's so bad she's going to have to move even if she makes herself unemployed because it's just got so bad, right? But if you're stuck in a job that's just slowly grinding you down, that's where you get stuck. And in my opinion, and in fact my strong statistical opinion, the biggest problem most organizations have is okay teams, because they're flat and they're underperforming. They've probably got higher, 50% higher staff turnover rates and higher burnout rates because people get worn down. The unhappy teams are even worse, but they're going to break up. They're going to change. Something's going to happen. The okay ones can persist for a long time. And when you really, really do the maths on it, the statistics on it, you can see that happy people, happy teams add twice as much value as okay ones. And how do I get to that? Well, they're more productive and they're more stable. So happy employees stay longer and they add value over a longer period of time. So just like we work out the lifetime value of a customer, if you work out the lifetime value of an employee, a happy employee has twice as much value as an okay one. Okay, an unhappy one is even less. They quit before you've got a real problem. You recruited someone, they're not a good fit, and they could either not be a good fit for the role or they're not a good fit in the team they go into, which is often what happens. They haven't got the right line manager. I've got a lot of sympathy for line managers. Most of them are promoted for technical skills, length of service, not for people skills. But the most important thing is people skills. We should promote people for people skills. We should support them to learn people skills and train them, rather than just say, here are the business goals, go and do those, go and do those, go and do those. It's actually, they're building a team. A team needs building. It doesn't just come together. It needs building. It needs an investment of time, attention to do that. And so it's a complex space, but okay is much more dangerous than people realize. That's kind of the thesis of the book in lots of ways.
But speaking of people, and because we all have this urge of we go to university or high school and we start working and we dream of climbing the ladder. But how? Because we can't not address the managers who, as you mentioned, they maybe don't have the people skills, or I don't want to blame anybody, but how can we in the bigger picture? Because I can't not go back to the bottom. Like, it is a serious business because you have the responsibility of so many, as you mentioned, burnout. It's just a job. Like, I'm just there. Like, how can we change this? So, and then the conflicts. Why is he promoted or she promoted or they promoted and not me? There are so many aspects of it. Do you touch that? Like, it is a many pages. Like, you don't read this overnight. Thank you very much. Because
but you have to open it up, and it's like it's got big print. Okay,
yeah.
it's not actually a scary. Yeah. It's got big print. It's got spaces. It's short chapters. The chapters are about 1,000 words, so you can read a chapter a night very, very easily. Fall asleep, and you haven't lost your place. So yeah, it is a longer book, but there's a lot to say. And to be honest, it could be twice as long. There's no doubt about it. I've got a lot more to say about it, but it's very lightly written. So I'm not going to take it. The criticism is heavy.
I would just do it like.
It's actually
there are pictures. There are pictures in it.
There are pictures and there are graphs.
But people have to listen also. Like, if they can listen to this book, then it would be brilliant. But
yeah, I will make an Audible version next year.
Yeah, but what about because we are talking about there are many people who are talking about managers, like, you get promoted, but is that the correct way? Because you can be a fantastic team player and you are valued, because it's also about being valued in the context of a team or in a role. And then the higher ups, they see, oh, you have potentials, and then you move up, and then that is not what you want. You think you want it, but actually you don't want it. Do you know what? Like, it's a little bit of.
I totally do. I mean, there is this old phrase, which is that people join organizations and they leave managers, and that's sort of been around for a long time. And actually, it's probably true. In my data, I can see that the team is 3 times as more important for people's happiness at work and actually their success at work than the organization. Our happiness and success lives at the team level in an organization. It's proximal. It's the people we work closely with. So things go well or badly at a team level mainly. So it is true. But it's also a failure of the organization, because the organization is surely there to support the team leaders to get the best out of their teams. And what they tend to do is promote people and let them sink or swim. And so some people are naturals and they rise, and some people aren't and they fall. And that seems to me daft, because one is in try and, promote people who've got the people skills, the listening skills, and naturally empathetic. Technical skills, you can find a different pathway for promoting and giving people more money. I mean, the problem is that the only way for people to get to a higher grade is to take on managing people in most organizations. Well, why shouldn't you have a technical expertise, pathway? They could mentor people about the technical skills, but they're not managing their day-to-day work. There's ways that you could do this. And I think some organizations do get this right, but that is a problem. But also, there's also another problem, which is that we tend to think that training courses are the best way to teach people. And are they? Because you take people out of work, you put them in hypothetical situations or trainings, and then they have to go back and apply it. And that is, are they able to do that? Do they have the support when they get back there? So I think training with then peer-to-peer support or ongoing supervision can really, really work, but it needs to be ongoing. And so, in the book, I create a very light methodology, which is that I think every week, every team leader should check in with their team, how happy they are. And then they should ask them 2 questions. What's going well for them this week? What went well for them this week? That is the strengths and people doing good job. That's what you want to build on. And then what's holding them back? What's frustrating them? Let's remove the friction and the blocks so they can do better work. Because a lot of happiness is about friction and flow, from an engineering analogy. What's holding you back? What's helping you move forward? And you can think of flow very literally in a Csikszentmihalyi way of like, it's, the idea of psychological flow, that when we're in the flow, we're really using our strengths and we're doing it. And you can also just think of it as like water flowing without any problem. So people like to progress their work. They don't like to get held back. And so you're working with their natural energy. So I think a lot more could be done to embed positive, high-performing cultures in teams. Yeah. And that's really where I get to. I'm obviously going to take a measurement-led approach. I'm a statistician. So it's not to say that's the only way to build happiness, but I think it's a very missed way of doing it.
So, because the book, I'm holding it now. I'm just like, and I'm looking at the chapters, and I like, what is he talking about? And I see like what we can learn from smokers, because that sentence is just like when you get stuck in something. And when I smoked vapor, I'm not like I condemn smoking, but you stood up. You were stuck in a rut, like you couldn't go further, and then you decided, I have to do something about this. And then you went out and you had a smoke, and you had this 7 minutes or whatnot, and then you calmed down, or you just, like, you were thinking about totally different stuff, not about your health, because that is not the issue, because you were smoking. And then you realized, somewhere in these 7 minutes it takes to smoke a cigarette, all of a sudden it's just this like, oh, yes, and then you quickly just throw it away and just like run, and you start working again. And I remember that when I quit smoking, I was so annoyed I was annoyed because the people who were smoking, they got 7 minutes extra, like pause or relaxation, where I was just working. But I think we could learn, isn't it? Like, we have to stand up and not be afraid of moving or just...
So I mean,
Yeah.
this is exactly where the idea for that little chapter came from. It's a little chapter, and it's light and it's funny, and at least I think it's funny. So the idea of the chapter was that I heard someone say maybe 10 years ago at the conference, oh, the only people that take their statutory breaks are smokers. And I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the statutory breaks, people don't take them. And I started to talk about it and saying about how it's good to take a break and whatever like that. And then someone said, oh, you've got to come up with a mnemonic. And I went, okay. And so I created this mnemonic, which is that smokers, S, stop what they're doing, which is what you just said. They M, move their body. They get up, move. It's really good. They go O, outside, which is actually really good to see the sky, fresh air. Okay, they're about to ruin the fresh air, but it's good outside, move yourself, right? And then they K, and people go, what's the K going to be? Oh, they kill themselves. They go, no, it's kickstart conversations. They kickstart, they take someone with them. They take a buddy, take a friend, have a chat. So, okay, you might be chatting about work, like you were saying, or you might not be. And then the E, I think, is the one that nobody really recognizes for smokers, which is that they exhale very mindfully. They exhale for longer than they inhale. So I've never been a smoker, right? But if I think of a picture of someone smoking outside an office, they're kicked back and they're looking kind of blissful. and they're doing mindful breathing just with a lot of carcinogens.
Yeah.
So, and mindful breathing, as we know, is like a really good way to calm the parasympathetic system, to calm down. And so you're stressed, it calms you down. So the trick is some people say exhale for longer than you inhale. Some people say, but basically you're doing mindful breathing. You're concentrating on your breath. This is probably why vaping is so attractive to people. It's, yes, it's partly a dummy in the mouth and sort of some sort of childhood thing, but I think it's also that it helps concentrate on the breath, and that calms us down. And then they are relaxed. So that's what smoker is. Stop what you're doing, move your body, go outside, kickstart conversations, exhale for longer you inhale, relax. And it's a joke, but it's also really, really true. And it's like people get, particularly with working from home, they get stuck, their shoulders are down, they get bad musculoskeletal stuff, they get burnt out because they're just stuck in front of the screens. You should be moving every hour. You should be moving, getting up, stretching. Maybe it's getting a cup of peppermint tea, whatever. That's why coffee shops are so popular too. But, something that you do that, and I mean, I know my wife occasionally smokes. And she rolls up a little cigarette, and I know she's getting into a chill space. It's a nice space when Zoe smokes. I'm not saying she should smoke, and she gives up, and then, but it's a relaxing thing, and it's interesting because I've actually presented this. I'm working with an NHS, National Health Service Trust, at the moment, and they just laughed when I said that. They loved it because it's like, you can see what it is. Yeah.
I totally get this, and I remember it when you were really climbing uphill, and you just like, there was some like, and then you stood up and went out and smoked, and then you came back, and it was just like, oh yeah. Then you realize, like, then you saw the light, or however we can. How profound we can be.
But moods are really, really important to manage. So there's a really good bit of work that I cite in the book, which was it was using social media. It was actually in France, and I think they had 40,000 people, and they were looking at their mood throughout the day, and they found some things which we know are very standard, which is that people who spent more time with other people were happier than those who are on their own. So isolation is a problem. That is a problem from working from home. People can get isolated. But the other one, the one I found really, really interesting, was that if you're in a bad mood, they could show you're more likely to reach out to a friend in the afternoon. So it isn't strictly in the morning or afternoon. It's any time frame. Think of it as in the morning. Bad mood in the morning, more likely to speak to a friend in the afternoon. Well, that makes sense. A friend's going to cheer you up. Yeah. So we are self-regulating our moods. But they also found the reverse, which is that if you are happier in the morning, you're more likely to take on a challenging task in the afternoon. One that that will suppress your mood, that is maybe difficult. And here we've got sort of delayed gratification. We've got the fact that we're managing our energy. We're not going to enjoy everything. Everything isn't going to be a joy. But if you're already miserable, you're not going to be able to take on those tasks which are challenging, but you need to do. Whereas if you're feeling good, I can kind of sacrifice a bit of short-term mood to get the job done. And this is kind of where we get to with work, which is that if people feel good, they do good work. And it's not that necessarily work has to feel good all of the time, but if we're going to do goal achievement, sometimes there's some sacrifice to get there. It's really important to try and bring those goals closer. So like sports psychologists, they don't just say go and win a gold medal in 2 years' time. You've got your training goals for today. You've got your training goals for this particular run, this particular exercise. You break it down, you break it down, you break it down. And I think a lot of teams and organizations are not good at breaking down the goals. They've got a big goal in the future, break it down, celebrate that you've achieved this small part of it. And that is kind of one of the insights of the book, I think, is to bring, goal achievement at least a weekly level. That's what's going well. Build on it, celebrate it.
And it's funny how you say that, because I was once in a team where we were supposed to look at some stuff regarding after school care. And it was like we had 3 models. We had the from the leisure center where the kids came and we had the responsibility for it. Then it was just inside the schools, and then it was a institution where the kindergarten, the school, and the after school care were all in grind, like it was all together. And it was a thing from the mayor. And when our results, because we couldn't figure out how much it was worth or what it cost, how much it literally cost the council. And he was not happy, because he expected other results than he did not. And I was just like, why didn't you say that, which results you wanted? Because you go on a journey, and then there are usually, isn't it, like there are vague.
Yeah.
The leaders know what they want, but if the team doesn't know it, and as you say, if they don't eat the elephant bit by bit, and then the results are, no, I don't like this, and you have been using loads of effort to work on it. You are looking into stuff. You are dissecting numbers and whatnot, and then no, this is not the result I wanted. And you're just like,
well, I can't.
It's like
yes, it is absolutely, and I can't tell whether he was trying to manipulate the results to something or what. But what is very, very clear is that leaders need to give teams direction and clarity in what they need to do.
Yeah.
And I think so. When you talk about people skills being really, really important, it is obviously also true that strategic goals need to be clear and to be muddled. And and did he only find out that's what he wanted because the project was progressing? Well, then that's about how is he involved in it? Because maybe after 4 weeks of the project, well, actually, this is kind of what I'm interested in. Can you think about it from this way? And then that's adapting. Whereas to let the whole project go and then go, oh no, I was thinking this. Well, that's no good, because it's like a boat sailing. You got to tack sometimes. You hardly ever in a project you're finding out stuff. It's very, I think very much in a sort of action research cycle. You're always checking in, because that's the sort of guardrails to make sure you're on the right way. And that is a leadership skill too. That is a people skill as well. It's a communication skill, and that's very, very important. I mean, but to go back to Iceland, Iceland has been this extraordinary country, probably in your lifetime, probably in the 70s. You had a real problem with teenage mental health, and I think you had the highest heroin addiction in Europe per teenager.
It was a liquor, like they were drinking in 1999. It was just like everybody decided to go it together. Fix the problem.
Yeah, and then you think what's come out of that? The Iceland football team doing really massively well compared to how big you are. The music scene is extraordinary. So out of these youth clubs has come this huge creativity and sporting prowess, because you invested in youth. And in the UK, there's no youth clubs. There's nothing. And I'm sure it's very helpful that you're a more human scale society, because you're 350,000 people or something like that. And it's like, and we are 60 million. But so what? Break up the UK into small regions and have youth clubs. Invest in them, because this is going to give them huge opportunity. And I think Iceland's been extraordinary in that. So if you were involved in that at all, then hats off to you, because it's like that was an extraordinary thing your country did.
Yeah, and it's fun because you have to give them belief that you can, but you have to also be realistic. But there are no dreams. You don't kill the dreams before you start like working on them, and that is also a thing. But the it is this thing about, because you mentioned clarity, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Oleg Konovalov about his book Beyond Chaos, where clarity is how clarity or chaos in your brain or mind can just make you frustrated and stuff. And that must also, because he talks about it in also in relation with manager or a workspace where you don't, why am I doing this? I remember times when I was supposed to do something and I was just like, ugh, yet another mission, and it will just go into the dustbin. Why am I doing this? Why are they? And because time is of the essence sometimes, because you are always distracted by some stuff that comes from outside and you can't focus on your stuff, what you want to focus on. And then all of a sudden it's just like, yet another project that will not be anything. But it's true that when you nurture music, creativity, and
I don't know why I lost you then.
yeah, I just something happened in this situation. But talk about, let's go further. In you have a chapter here where I can relate because I'm an island. I live on an island in the North Atlantic. How the British weather helped prove the power of happiness. You must be joking.
I'm not.
How did the British weather help prove the power of happiness?
So it's statistically, it's very difficult to prove causality. Everybody will kind of know that correlation isn't causality. And so if we're trying to prove the causality that happiness drives business outcomes, that's a difficult causal link to do. It's easy enough to find correlational data. It's overwhelming, the correlational data. And there's even what we call intertemporal correlation data, which is that at time A, happiness, is related to outcomes at time B. That is still not a proof of causality because there can be intermediate variables that are holding, that can be other reasons. So in academia, they're going to get really, tight about this and say that's not a proof of causality, and they are correct. So what people have done is in lab situations, they've moved people into different moods and they've shown they do more. And that we have some good proof of causality, but that's not a real world setting. So what has been missing from the literature until about a year and a half ago is a proof of causality in a natural setting, as in an organization. And it's led by Jean-Emmanuel Deneve, who is a professor at Oxford University, George Ward, who's MIT, and then another guy who's in France, and I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, third author. And they worked in British Telecoms, which is the biggest provider of phone lines and internet in the UK. And they looked at their sales operators, how happy they were in a week and how many they sold. And they showed, as normal, that there is effect from happiness to sales. But it's not a proof of causality because we know that selling something can make you feel happy. So you've got entwined cause and effect there. Then they did something very clever, was they looked at the weather and how the weather impacted people's moods. Because we're British, right? We always talk about the weather. When it sun shines, it's an event because it doesn't shine very much. So you have a nice weather week, people feel happier, right? And then they sold more. And they could follow that through. And you can't go the other way because you can't be King Canute and pretend you can change the weather. You can't. If you're happier, that doesn't make the sunshine. It's that way. It only can be that way. And so it's the first direct proof of causality from happiness because the sun. And they even went to the length where they looked at how many windows there were in the different offices, the different places, and that had a bigger effect. And they looked at whether it was actually customers, because there's just a possibility the sun could be shining, could make the customers spend more. But because people were routed to different centers, not from where they were, just who was next available, they could basically show it was the local weather that was driving the sun. And it's a beautiful piece of statistics. And it's funny that it's the weather that actually showed it. And it's a really important part in the sort of evidence base for why happiness is a serious business, because it's causal.
But I find it interesting you say that, because before we started, it was gloomy, it was dark, it was raining, and now the sky clouds are moving, the sun is over there, and I can feel my mood. Well, also because I'm talking to you and you're a funny guy, but there is something about the weather, and if there is something that we here in Iceland. Oh, and then you have to, in Iceland, you had to add the volcanoes, and you you never know what the nature is going to do and stuff. So, and we are much more like, well, we don't know what happens in 6 months, so we just live life. Sometimes in a wrong way, but like the weather has a big, it's a big thing.
It has an effect. It's measurable.
Yeah.
It's not a strategy for businesses to wait for good weather and also it's almost certainly an effect that you'll experience in Northern European countries more than Southern, because we have more variability of weather, and we have, so yes, Iceland, Scandinavia, Nordic countries and us are going to have this more than Southern European, where it shines all the time and it can get oppressively hot. So Britain and Iceland probably live in a weather band where this effect is there, because good weather is rarer for us, and so therefore the impact is more. But but it's not a strategy to wait for the sun to shine. The strategy is to build it in relationships, like you and me. It's a much bigger effect that you're feeling happier that you're speaking to me, because that's much more proximal to you. But the weather absolutely does have an impact, and too hot weather is probably worse than too cold weather, because you can at least get good clothes in cold weather. It's quite difficult to cool down.
And if the weather is bad outside, then you can read.
Yeah, you can light a fire. You can get all hygge. You can snuggle down. I mean, you see seasonal effects, like in the UK. I know the UK data well. We're actually entering happiness is dropping nationally because it's autumn, and it's like summer's gone, holidays have gone. We get a peak at Christmas for the holidays, and then January and February even worse. And then it starts rising again as the days get longer. So, there's definitely seasonal effects in there.
Yeah. You have a reference to Clint Eastwood, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Only, whereas you just drop the good out. But I like chapter 31. The name of chapter 31 is The 3 Ps.
Oh, yeah.
Ping pong, pizza, and parties. And why I like it is because as a youth club worker, the ping pong table was essential in, when you were playing, you were talking to them about stuff that you usually did not get on the surface.
Okay, well, I go a different way with that chapter, which is that I say that ping pong, pizza, and parties are not going to build happy teams.
No, but I knew that. I thought it was probably not, because why does there always have to be liquor and stuff? Because that is not the way. People, that is not the way.
There's an old Chinese phrase, isn't there, which is that if you want to be happy for a night, get drunk. If you want to be happy for a year, get married. And if you want to be happy for life, garden. So short-term hedonistic pleasure exists, whether that's alcohol or something else, right? Okay. And it doesn't also have to be hedonistic, but short-term pleasure exists. And then there's long-term things that you do that build meaning and sort of bake things into your life, which is kind of the idea of gardening. And the thing about marriage is just a joke, isn't it? I say basically that it's no good stressing people out and then saying, well, we're going to have pizza on Friday, or there's a ping pong table. There's one CEO of a startup, I must be 150 people I met in the States, and And I was chatting with him about this, and he goes, "Oh, I did the ping pong table thing, and I bought the ping pong table, and every time I go past the ping pong table, if there's no one on it, I think it's a waste of money. If there's somebody on it, I think they're not working." He said it's a lose-lose. This happiness game is a lose-lose. and you know, and of course it was very funny, and he was a funny guy. And I just think we can't, it's no good trying to make teenage cultures. It's no good trying to say, if we look in professional services, when I was young, and actually still is, often it's like, let's go out for a drink after work. That's, and basically relationships are made outside of work in an alcohol fueled environment. That excludes all sorts of people from promotion, people that don't drink, people that have the audacity to have children and a family, as if that's not a human thing. It's not a hobby having a child and a family. That is life. Yeah. And people who, women who don't feel safe in those environments because it gets laddish. And so there's all sorts of things it excludes. And we, we should make things that bring people together within working hours, because it is good for work. So, have lunches together, where you bring, potluck lunches, and you share, someone makes something and they explain why that's important to them and their family, their culture, do things that bring people together. But, if you go out and you create all these different networks of people which are based outside of the work, then things are unfair. And I think organizations should work into that. So basically what I'm saying is that teams really matter, but the way to build them is not with perks and things. Yeah.
Because time flies when you're having fun, and we have 3 minutes.
Okay.
And in your promotion, like, the first sentence is, happiness at work isn't just nice to have.
Yeah.
It is essential for success. And people who want, and I urge them, because you are fantastic. I met you in Como, Italy in 2023. Probably there, where I thought you were a mad scientist because of your looks, but extremely fun and good. So, and people, if you read this book, you can understand what happiness at work really looks like. Boost happiness to improve team performance, lead in ways that build trust and well-being, avoid common mistakes that undermine team happiness, and use practical strategies to build thriving, happy teams. And as that is not enough, you are a little bit bonkers. I don't know if you're a good businessman when you do this. So people, if they go to your website, nicmarks.org/books, they can download parts 1 and 2. Why, Nic?
My mission is to improve the world of work, and I would like my soft marketing strategies to embody that. So if people can read parts 1 and 2, and hopefully they want to read parts 3, 4, 5, and 6 afterwards. So it's not entirely without. But also, it's. I just want people to try it. It's like, and see where they are. So yeah, so it's downloadable there as a PDF, the first 2 parts, and there's a link in the last page for buying the book if you want. But, in the end, I'm interested in building happier workplaces. And I do that really through my public speaking. So I do keynotes for organizations, for conferences. I do masterclasses for both senior leaders on the business case, for team leaders on how they can build happy teams. And then I have Friday Pulse, which is a platform that measures and improves team happiness. So we've got all of that. And, this is my life. This is what I'm doing for the next few years. So, yeah.
And just people, if you're listening or watching this later on or whatnot, I have met this man, and he is as he looks, but he is great fun and everything. The only thing I'm worried about, that your wife will go bonkers, because you have this bookcase behind you, red, yellow, blue. Where will she put the blue and yellow book?
I mean, so is I don't know whether she really thinks of herself an artist, but she is an artist, and she went to art school, and so aesthetics are very important. So when we were, moving my office around to make a background, she went, "I'll do this," and it looks beautiful. I really like it, and it's.
But then you have to have fill the empty space with only your book, because
I know I should put another one. Anyway, I'm you know I do my best. She's got more aesthetics than me. So.
Yeah. But Nic, like I urge people to go to your website, nicmarks.org/books, and download parts 1 and 2 of your book for free. And then, of course, buy it, because this is so important. And as for the segment where we have the countdown, like, happiness at work is not a slogan. It is a question. And I think that, and this is like, happiness at work, or happiness is a serious business, because there are so much stuff at stake, isn't it? Because there is nothing. Why do you have the turnover? Why? Like, look into this stuff and think, why is this going on? And finally, Lily Rodich, happiness is more real when shared, regarding 3 chapters. I bought the book, reading, she says. So thank you, Lily. So that is great. But is there anything you want to say for the final? Like, but okay, I will just say, buy your book, isn't it?
Well, just, I think, take happiness seriously, whether you buy the book or not. It's take your own happiness outside of life seriously too. It's the stuff of life, and you won't be happy all the time. That would be dysfunctional. But try and be happy more of the time.
Well, Nic, it has been brilliant. Thank you, like, from the bottom of my heart, because you are a great guy, and I love talking to you in Como, because we had a laugh, and it's great when we people who think alike, and they are just slightly bonkers in their head. So that's.
I think I'm just not ground down. I think I've allowed myself not to get stuck in okay.
Yes.
I think I'm still alive at 60, so that's okay.
And it's okay to go sideways. You don't always have to go straight ahead. So thank you very much, and just, I hope people who are watching, whenever they will enjoy it, and just have a great week, and just, I hope your book will just